a certain societal culpability on one level there. What did you think of that?
I thought his contribution was disgraceful. And the reason I say that is because what he omits to say when he talks about we engage in the language of delight and our morbid relationship with respectability, people who got pregnant out of wedlock were condemned as demons from the pulpit. And the church had a grip by the ghoulies of the people of this country for decades. And there was a strong relationship set up between the state and the church, no secret nowadays, between Archbishop McQuaid and De Valera at the time, which allowed the church wreak havoc on an impoverished nation. Remember, it was a poor place, and these were mainly children of the poor. And regardless of how women got pregnant, whether it was out of love or out of rape, they were treated, when they got pregnant out of wedlock, as the demons and the devil. And that same man, P.J. Hafferty, at one point said to the nuns, we were all bastards. And that's literally the way they saw them. And the description of how those kids were treated is unbelievable. The women who unfortunately had to leave their babies behind them in those homes did not think they were leaving their babies to be brutalised in the way that they were, or to be buried in the way that they were, or to be trafficked in the way that they were. All of this happened. And he said it there. His mother knocked on the door looking for her son back, and they wouldn't let her have him back. So the nuns carried out a systemic system of abuse of those children, and they did it with the blessing of the state.
And
the mothers and their parents were not to blame for it.
Look, there's no question the primary culpability is with the church and then the state, but should it be acknowledged that very few in society stood up and shouted stop? Noel Brown was an example in a different sphere.
It should
was
be
there many Noel Browns around the country?
There weren't, and I saw recently, in the last few days, a photo of a Communist Party publication in the 1930s, and of course the Communist Party were worse than the devil to the church, but the Communist Party were calling for investigation into these homes. But, you know, where I live in Ballyfermot, the Communist Party used to be very strong, but the church in Ballyfermot drove them out of the community with systemic accusations against them.
And Michael O'Riordan was a man who was very wronged at the time.
Michael O'Riordan was very wronged, and the church in Ballyfermot then went on to famously abuse lots of children. So I think what the Taoiseach said was completely ill-founded, misplaced, and afterwards, when I asked him, would he raise his voice with me in calling for the order of the Bon Secours to disband because they have no moral authority in this country, he would not answer.
OK. Fergus, what did you think of it?
I thought it was a powerful, moving speech. Children were treated barbarously. I've met some of the women, I've met some of the people who grew up in those homes, and the barbarous treatment, but the barbarism of how they treated the dead babies defies description, defies belief.
I actually think it flows naturally one from the other. If you treat babies like that when they're alive, of course you're going to discard their bones when they die. Of course you've no respect for them, because you've no respect. They were 1.5, 2, 3 years of age. How in the name of God could they justify treating little human beings like that? They couldn't. And the same people call people like me who stand up for the right to choose baby killers. I mean, where do you get off with this?
I know it's a different issue,
but
just briefly,
the language is disturbing.
What did you think of the Taoiseach speech?
I think he did.
It has the power to get records. It has the power, if it deems necessary, to even destroy those records. And that makes you wonder, is it the correct model to look into this whole thing? You know, because what we're dealing with are, in a lot of instances, lives that are lost, unfortunately, and looking at systems failures in that regard. Is this the correct way to go at it?
No, I don't think so, and I tend to agree with Fergus on this one. Look, the church did make profit out of this, and what we're failing to mention here is not just dead babies, but trafficked babies. Thousands of them were trafficked illegally to families in America. And the figures we have for per head at the time, per child, was roughly around $2,000 to $3,000. A lot of money in them days. And we have now the biggest private healthcare provider in the country, the Bon Secours, opening a new hospital yesterday in Limerick, in the old site of Barrington's. And shamefully, the Minister for Finance, Michael Noonan, stood there on the same day that Pat Mulryan had to go to the High Court to find out, was his sister still alive, was she trafficked, or was she buried as a bag of bones in Tuam? And shamefully, he stood there opening and extending the empire of the Bon Secours. And that's why today I called for us to call on the Bon Secours to reconsider their position and to dissolve their order in Ireland, because they should not exist any longer. And I think we have to take really strong, practical measures to undo the harm that was done to all these people, and to show that we're serious about breaking the connection between church and state. And these kind of measures can do it.
The business of babies being trafficked, and
the Commission is about. So we should be, as legislators, I would like to see us expanding it further out, because there isn't a county in the country that hasn't been affected by mother and baby homes, but we're only looking at 14 at this moment.
But you're not for breaking the deal with the church. Okay. You're not for rescinding the Michael Woods deal.
I'm not saying I'm not at this moment in time, Bridge. I am not saying that whatsoever. I'm saying in actual fact what we should go back is look completely at the terms of reference. Like what we have heard and what has gone on for the last number of years is absolutely horrific. It's stomach-turning. I cannot condone it for one split second, Bridge.
There is an issue there with unintended consequences, Brid, like to some of what you're asking about. If we
Woods deal and call on the order to disband. Okay. They have no moral authority.
But I mean, we don't have the authority either to prejudge the work of the Commission. I mean, you want to be judged.
Is there a case?
No, but I mean, Brid wants to be judged.
Without going to the Commission of Inquiry, is there a case to look at a different form in which the survivors of all the institutions, including the Magdalen laundries, can...
Tonight before I left the Dáilgas, was there till 10 o'clock debating the question of the 14-year sentence that is contained in the legislation for women who procure abortions in this country. And I met Finian McGrath and I said to him, what about the terms of reference? Are you happy with it? Are you happy that you're going to recommend it? And he said, Grace will be investigated. We need to get that done quickly, and I believe the rest will follow. But there's one thing, Finian McGrath, as the current Minister for Disabilities, believing that the rest will follow. It has to be in the terms of reference. And if they don't do that, they'll make a bags of this one, like they make a bags of, all of the investigation after investigation of clerical abuse. And it is not just this home. The Inclusion Ireland say there are 3,000 disabled adults in care in this country who are being abused every day of the week because the homes are underfunded, inadequately run, and they face continual abuse. Not necessarily of the gravity that Grace faced, but the underfunding of the services means that patients are being abused.
I'm caught for the time because after the break